So it's our last team, and I think we're finishing on a good one. We're finishing on the San Antonio Spurs. And personally, you're going to make a case. I'm going to try to figure out how on earth you're going to make that case. But it is the big three. It is Manu, Duncan, and Parker who led them to a multitude of championships, so many 50-win seasons. Like it was a joke, right? Like certainties in life was death, taxes, and Spurs winning 50 games and being in the playoffs. Like they were a legitimate dynasty that never repeated or three-peated. And the closest that they came, I think, ironically, was against Miami. If they don't lose on a Ray Allen buzzer beater to send it to overtime, they win then. And then they were clearly poised to dismantle the team again. For so long, they were just reputable for drafting. They get David Robinson to then get Tim Duncan to then get Kawhi Leonard. And, often players would come in and fill a void for their roles. A role player would come to the Spurs, be really good, leave the Spurs, you'd never hear from them again, which was another point of being a very good franchise, drafting well. They always seem to have international players. We're probably about to see it again with Wembanyama. So I'm picking this iconic big three because this is what you probably think of when you say a big three.
Hey, I'm not going to follow your image. Don't get me wrong. All right. Your image is a you're right. You could say this is one of the greatest big three in NBA history, and clearly for the Spurs franchise, such a successful trio. In fact, fun facts here, I think they're probably the most winningest trio in NBA history, I think, in that sense. So, um, I guess some of the logic I applied when we picked these iconic images was like the order of things. And that's why I've gone for a different image. My image here has Greg Popovich and David Robinson and Larry Brown. Yeah, also on the bench there. Yeah, and this is obviously the bench in the 90s for the Spurs. And similar to like with the Heat, I picked drafting D Wade over the big three there. And that shot, obviously, Ray Allen shot as part of that big three run. Um, you know, I think there'd been other aspects, like say with Atlanta, you picked obviously Trae Young and his iconic moments, I guess, at MSG against the Knicks, whereas I picked Draft Night, where they actually made that trade for Trae Young and gave up Luka. And I think to me, the logic here in the Spurs and why I picked this image, I'm going to say is somewhat more iconic than yours. And yours is iconic. I'm not going to argue that at all. Okay. But I'm saying mine supersedes yours because mine came first. Because there is no big three and there is no dynasty if there is no image that I've selected here first. And it comes to a few points here. One, David Robinson. Yeah. He put them on the map as the superstar center that he was. But then that injury that occurred that led to that number one pick that then became Tim Duncan. There's just that sort of crazy narrative. Yeah, you talk about narrative all the time that happens. Yeah, it's like the similar to like the Warriors. They had a season where they just lost. They won 15 games. And then they suddenly came back because everyone was healthy and they got some high picks and so on and so forth. And bang, they win another ring. Yeah, and there's probably moments through NBA history where you've had those sort of moments that, wow, how did that happen? Then this transpired and that occurred, right? That sort of situation. Um, Obviously, that's the component from a player perspective. Would the Spurs be what they are without Greg Popovich? Yeah, I don't know. You can come back and answer that one in a second, right? Because you look at this organization and everything they achieve. You'd have to say it really comes back to from the top down. Yeah, not only from obviously ownership and management, but coaching. And I think Popovich is clearly besides say like Phil Jackson and, in the last 20 years, you'd have to argue he's the most successful coach in NBA history. Hands down. He's the winningest coach in NBA history. That's a fact. Okay. And then the greater picture here is that the level of, from a coaching perspective, that the Spurs were able not only to generate, you talked about players, and that's true, absolutely. They were able to bring a lot of role players and create a sort of value for them and careers from them because they played that 1, 2, 3 years at the Spurs. But that coaching staff, the branches of the coaching staff from the Spurs. Yeah, and something that I guess we probably never really talked about, in the sense that there's so many great coaches that came through that then went somewhere else. All right, and Larry Brown's one of them, and there's so many you can mention in that sort of sense that throughout the years that have gone from not only NBA but now WNBA with Becky Hammon and so on and so forth, and she then won the championship with the the Aces in that sense. That this organization, you said it, it's a good one play to end with, yeah, after going through 30 organizations that, as much as they haven't been really exciting in the highlight reels or game winners or crazy dunks or anything like that, this is arguably the franchise that's just been the cornerstone of success. And and they just continue to do that. I think even when they're not necessarily winning games, just the way they go about it. And now they've got Wembanyama, and it'll be interesting to see the next 5 or 10 years for them.
Yeah, look, the coach aspect is something that you can't gloss over. Popovich is probably regarded as the best coach of all time. I know Phil Jackson comes in to slide there, but you look at the teams that he was gifted, you do wonder if Popovich traded places with Phil Jackson, do we get the same timelines playing out? It's a fun what if. When you mentioned the David Robinson thing, some fun facts about David Robinson. He didn't play for 2 years because he served in the Navy, so that allowed the Spurs to kind of keep being bad, despite the fact that his draft rights were there. And then his injury comes at the best time, right? Where Tim Duncan's available. Their what if is probably one of the few what ifs positively, right? We've talked so much about teams where it's like, well, what if they didn't get injured? What if this didn't happen? What if they were able to draft one ahead? This is the team that their entire trajectory, their destiny is almost predicated off, well, what if it didn't happen? Like, what do the Spurs look like if they didn't get Tim Duncan? And if they don't draft Manu at like 56, and if they don't get Parker at 28, like, what happens if that doesn't happen? This is, I think, a franchise that's just run well. That's the thing. I think they make their own luck. I think the Spurs are one of the few franchises that could actually say that, like, they try to remove every extraneous variable out of the picture. They don't want luck. They want to pick the right people. They moved off Kawhi Leonard because clearly they realized that, okay, well, he just doesn't want to play for us, and there's no reason to hold on to that. And they did, they kind of set the precedence of trading a disgruntled superstar, but they made him wait. Like there's all these things that the Spurs have done that they're just silent pioneers. So I think, like, even your picture, I actually don't want to discredit it too much because I think the Spurs in general, they're just like, maybe I should have been a Spurs fan. I grew up with a guy who was a Spurs fan and I never understood it because they weren't flashy and sexy. But I probably should have been because I think I would appreciate it now in my later years. I'd be like, this is a well-run franchise, and we just make good signings and we get rid of people that are problems, and we don't keep them around. What a wholesome end, I think, to our
What a
series of iconic moments.
what a realization.
This is Two Guys with Spare Time. I'm Faz, this is Nick. You're probably a basketball fan like us, so hopefully you can throw us an assist in giving our video a like and subscribing to our channel.
And if you got thoughts, feelings, or even some suggestions, please put them down in the comment section below. And thank you for using your spare time to watch us in our spare time.